welcome today, Debbie. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you kind of got involved in cancer?
Thank you very much, Deb, for having me here today, because I think it's really very important that we share our stories. In my case, I grew up in Argentina with a long family history of breast, ovarian, colon cancer. So at some point in time, I knew that I was going to be diagnosed too. I started doing screenings very, very early in my life because of that family history. And it was very important. And my dad would tell me all the time, Debbie, you should go for your mammogram. You should make sure that there is nothing, there is not a diagnosis or a lump or something. So I was always waiting for that diagnosis, just because it was not going to be if I was going to be diagnosed, but when.
So, can you tell us a little bit, walk us through what your diagnosis experience was like?
Okay. As I mentioned before, I would go every 6 months, and I would do sometimes MRIs, sometimes mammograms and ultrasound, because always they found, since I was more or less, I think 32 years old, they started finding different lumps. They were always benign. So they would just do a biopsy and they were benign. So I will continue with the screening. And until December of 2009, I went for my regular mammogram, ultrasound, and the results were clear. But then in April of 2010, I found a lump that I was watching TV and I felt something that really was very hard on my left breast. And I felt that lump. So I went to the doctor and he was really going crazy trying to look at the mammogram and ultrasound from December because that lump was not there.
Mhm.
So, and this time when I saw his face, it looked like it was different because the shape and the hardness and everything of that lump was different. So he said, okay, let's go and do a biopsy just to confirm whether or not we have a lump that is benign as it used to be, or we have something different. So they did that biopsy, and unfortunately, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in April of 2010.
When you were diagnosed with your breast cancer, how long did it take you to go through your diagnosis process?
So they did the biopsy, and I did it with the same doctor that used to do all my other biopsies. And when I look at her face, I realized that there was something different because she was not making that eye contact. I said, well, so what do you think? It's like, well, we'll send it to the lab and we'll figure it out. And when it came back, the report, it might have been maybe 4 weeks later that I pick up the report. I read the words that it says there, that it said carcinoma. And when I read that, I said, okay, so what do I do now? Luckily, I went with a friend of mine, and she was really very supportive. She came with me also to my first appointment with the doctor. At that point in time, he told me, well, it looked like the lymph nodes were clear, but then we had to wait around 10 or 15 days until we got the final pathology report that the lymph nodes were negative.
Okay.
But also we had to wait the pathology report for the lump. And when it came back, it said, the report, that it was triple negative breast cancer. Back then, not breast cancer was only one. Now they identify different reasons why breast cancer grows. It could be, there are 3 different hormones that they can increase the probability of developing this type of lumps. That is estrogen, progesterone, and HER2. When you have triple negative breast cancer, it means that the 3 hormones were not present in the growth of that tumor. So it means that it's unknown, the reason. That's why when I went to the oncologist, they said, with your family history and triple negative breast cancer, let's see if we can do genetic testing.
So can you tell us like how many doctors were involved and what was the sequence of events? You've done some of that already, but let's
Yes.
kind of go through the doctors that were involved.
Yes, first it was a breast surgeon. He's the one that was following me up because of my prior diagnosis. So I went to him. Then the other one was the radiologist slash doctor that does your biopsy. But after that, when I did my lumpectomy, the doctor said, well, with this report, there is triple negative breast cancer, you should go to an oncologist, a breast oncologist. So he sent me a referral to that breast oncologist. So I went to that first one, and I tell you, I went to 4 different ones because I was not satisfied with the answers that they gave me when I would ask questions. And for you to have an idea why I ended up with number 4 is because she's the only one that recommended genetic testing. And she was the one that spent so much time with me, just looking at my family history, just looking into different types of treatments for that specific tumor at that type of triple negative breast cancer. So she was the doctor that still is taking care of me after 14 years.
And that's very important also, Debbie, right? You need to make sure that you feel comfortable with the medical advice and the relationship that you build with those people, right?
Especially because she answered all my questions, because she wrote down all my diagnoses, handwritten in 2010. They were not using that many computers. So she wrote it down. And at the end of those 4 pages, she wrote the prognosis saying, what would she consider to be my outcome with the treatment that she was proposing?
Okay.
And really, she was amazing because in that way, I felt confident that I was putting my future, my health on her hands, and she was going to take care of me.
Yes. So it sounds like you were involved in what we call shared decision making with your doctors. Yes?
Yeah, but not because I knew what to ask, because a friend of mine recommended this patient. She already went through the process and she was the one that came with me and she was asking all the questions because I
Hmm.
didn't know even what to ask.
Why
So
not?
we
Right.
need to go with somebody to that first consultation. We need to ask somebody to go with us to take notes, to ask the right questions, and make sure that we get all the answers for a complete treatment.
Well, and unfortunately, some people don't have the option of having someone go with them to their doctor's office. So many times, if you ask a doctor to, if it's okay to record your discussion, that's fine. And so that way you also have it available, right, to talk to you or to help your family members understand what's going on and for you to play it back and definitely taking notes if you can't record anything. Those are important things to think about as well.
The other thing that is very important also is to get a copy of all the test results. Because by having the copy of the test results, then you can share it with other doctors if you need to get a second opinion. So it's really important. I always tell patients just to keep a record of all. Oh, they said, oh, it's in the portal. Yeah, but it would be a good idea for you to have a copy of all those reports.
What kinds of tests or scans did you have before you were diagnosed?
Okay, before being diagnosed, I would go for my every 6 months for my mammogram and ultrasound. Sometimes if he would find something, he would do an MRI also of that fourth oncologist that I mentioned before. She told me, well, with your family history and the result of the biopsy that is triple negative breast cancer, I'm going to recommend you go and do genetic testing.
And how did you find out what it meant?
So when I went to my doctor, she's the one that explained to me what that meant. So it's very important that you check your body and make sure that if you feel something different, you go to your doctor.
So how long did it take to get your diagnosis after your biopsy? And what was that like?
Mhm. Well, I think it took me a couple of months just because I went and I looked, I had these 4 consultations. Not only that, they told me that first you have to heal from the lumpectomy in order to be able to start any kind of treatment. So after that, they did also a complete body scan. They did other tests, the genetic test that it took maybe 6 weeks to come back. So I would say that it took a couple of months for me to have the complete picture of my diagnosis in order to be able to start my treatment.
And that is an important point too, is that most people, even with some fast-growing cancers, have time, right, to search out like you did, different doctors, different tests, different examples of what types of different treatments that you can have, so that you have the time to go through a decision process to decide what's right for you.
I don't think I research because I believe in what the doctor was telling me, and I was reading all the material that she provided me with more than just Googling some information, because I found out that really sometimes you can find inaccurate information on a website that is not one of the ones that they are reputable.
Were there some words and terms that were confusing to you when you spoke with your doctor or your medical team?
Hmm. Um, Mostly the genetic test, because really for me, that was something that nobody offered to me before. I started just looking into some organizations that they provided support, where they explained to me that there were many other families that they were going through this type of diagnosis. So you can research and you can find an organization or support group that can help you to understand all these terms.
Um, so that's how you found out about different words that you didn't understand, by finding some patient advocacy groups that could help you with some of that, as well as your
Correct.
medical team.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us how you felt after you were diagnosed?
Hmm. Well, as I started telling you about my family history, so when I was diagnosed, my kids, they were 13 and 14 years old, very similar at the age that my mom died. And really, I was I was really concentrated in saying, okay, I need to be here for my kids, because my mom didn't see me graduating from college, from high school, get married, have my kids. So really, I wanted to be here for my kids. So I was ready and decided that I had to do everything that the doctor told me, because it was very important for my family, for my kids, for me to be here for them, to attend their graduations, to attend their sports, to see them growing, to see them, now one is going to get married next year. So the feeling was that I needed to be here for them.
How did you explain your diagnosis to others? And you mentioned your kids. How did you handle that?
Yeah, I always try to be very truthful and transparent. My kids, they came into the room after I had my lumpectomy. And one of them, the youngest one, he said, "So, Mom, was it cancer?" And I said, "Yes." And the doctor said that he removed all what he could find, that lump. And now they're going to do all the necessary treatments for it not to come back. And they look at me and they said, "Okay." So really, when you explain that to your kids, they have peace of mind that you are going to be truthful with them, and they're not going to be as scared, because in my case, when I was growing up, I was really scared because I knew that my mom would go to surgeries, radiation, she would lose her hair, but nobody could talk about cancer because back then, really, there was not a chance for a cure of cancer. Instead, now we have that probability. So, really, it's very important that we share that with our families so they can have peace of mind that we are doing everything necessary to survive.
So instead of feeling something and thinking, "Oh, that's nothing. I won't worry about it," you suggest getting it checked out.
Action.
Yeah, take action.
If you feel something, go to your doctor. That is the best advice that I can give you. And just go for your regular screenings because that prevention can save your life.